A lot of you guys are probably thinking that you should go with the safe full frame camera options like Sony or Canon. But in this video, I think I'm going to hopefully explain to you guys why I think that that might not be the case. We are absolutely spoiled with amazing full frame, affordable cameras these days. And I really don't think you can make a bad decision per se. However, I do think you can make a smarter decision. So in this video, I'm going to break down which full frame budget cameras I think are the best bang for your buck and which ones you should actually invest in. Now, let's just be completely transparent before we get too far into this. This video is not sponsored by any camera company. It's not going to be Canon, Lumix, Sony, Nikon, none of them. This is going to be just kind of my opinions on basically where the camera full frame market is today. That being said, this video is sponsored by Ulanzi, and I'm actually using their really cool new GlideGo tripod. It has some unique features that I've never seen before in other tripods, so we'll cover that in a little bit. But just know for all of these tripod shots, that's the tripod that we're using. But before we kick off into these cameras that I have in front of me, the four cameras that I think are probably the best option right now, I do want to talk about maybe what exactly makes a good full frame camera today, especially in the budget category. Obviously, you're going to want great image quality. That one's just kind of a given. Everyone wants that, but we also need solid autofocus. Everything that we're doing today is a lot of content creation kind of stuff. So being able to use reliable autofocus is going to be a big deal. Also, not every camera system has really affordable lens options. So I think that's going to play a huge factor into this lineup. Also, I'm going to be looking into a simple upgrade path. So if you're going to be getting into the full frame system down the line, you may want to advance to a higher end camera. And is there an option for that as well? And then lastly, for me at least, I'm looking for cameras that have video first features that are going to kind of grow with you rather than restrict you. So that's kind of the guidelines. We're going to go through these one at a time and then kind of have an end all discussion. I wasn't sure which order to go in with these four cameras that I'm going to be talking about, but I figured I'd start it with the camera that kind of re-sparked a lot of my joy when it comes to filming video, and that's going to be the Lumix S5 IIX. Now, this camera is not necessarily new. I think it came out a little over 2 years ago now, but even in today's market, this camera is absolutely killer. It is able to do 6K open gate video, and if you don't know what open gate means, basically I'm filming in it right now instead of a 16:9, so it's going to be shorter top to bottom, wider on the sides. Now, even though that's still true, you get a little bit more height on the top and bottom of your image, which is super helpful if you're needing to recut for social media content like on Instagram or YouTube Shorts, for example. Don't you agree, Jericho?
I agree fully.
Other things about this camera that are really great, although these are kind of standard now, you do get a really solid flip screen. And again, now with these new full frame Lumix cameras, we have phase detect autofocus. And basically all that means is that your autofocus is going to be much more reliable, especially when focusing on a human subject. So that's going to be really fantastic. Now, one standout thing when it comes to Lumix cameras, and a lot of this might be redundant as I will talk about other Lumix cameras in this video, it has best in class image stabilization. That means if you're kind of getting into it and maybe you don't have money to invest in a really solid tripod or into a gimbal system, you're able to kind of get away with this camera in a handheld environment, and it looks really good. And this really is just a complete camera. On the side, you're going to get a full-size HDMI port, which on a lot of cameras, you're honestly not getting, which is really annoying. You also have both a mic and a headphone jack, so not only can you record audio out, you can also monitor it on the camera, which again is a really nice touch. And other things about it, you do get a full functioning electronic viewfinder, and this camera has a built-in fan. And if you don't understand why that's important, basically a lot of these higher end codecs and such like that, being able to record in 6K, the camera tends to get hot. So having a built-in fan is going to mean the camera can record a lot longer without overheating. Dual card slots, remote trigger slot. This camera really is just such a fabulous camera. And the most important thing is it is a little bit on the older side, so you can get it a lot cheaper. When this camera first came out, I think it was about 2,300 bucks. So it's just a stellar deal for everything that this camera is capable of. Now, one of the best things that I find with the whole Lumix system is that you're getting very video focused features, things that are not in any other camera systems of a comparable price, which is pretty interesting. You're getting things like anamorphic support. If you're not planning on using anamorphics, then you can skip past this to the next part, but anamorphic lenses are really beautiful, and budget anamorphics have become more and more of a thing lately. So the fact that all of these Lumix cameras support anamorphic lenses, being able to de-squeeze it internally so you can actually preview what the image will look like, and also giving you anamorphic stabilization, which is completely unique to the Lumix system, make this such a valuable tool for content creation and also maybe even for short film content. So the tripod I've been using to make this video is the Ulanzi GlideGo, and this is about to be my new go-to travel tripod because it has some unique features that I really haven't seen in any other tripod, but there's a few really important things that I wanted to discuss. First off, the legs on it are all carbon fiber, so that means that it's extremely lightweight. The most heaviest thing on this is definitely the camera, so if I go ahead and take that off, this is all it is. By the way, you'll notice how quickly I took off the camera. That's because it has this really awesome quick release plate. So I just snap that back on, and now the camera is hooked back in. Press one button, and the camera comes right off. Pretty neat. So the first thing that's important about this is that it gets really tall. Now, the legs itself, they get about as tall as any other travel tripod on the market. That's not really the kicker here. Just like any other tripod, this is about as tall as it gets, right about to my chin, maybe a little bit lower. But what's cool is, of course, you have the traditional thing where you can extend it up like this, and now it's almost as tall as me. But there's one more latch, so you can extend it even higher. So yeah, that's kind of crazy for a tripod to be taller than me. I'm 6 foot, so I don't know how tall this is, but there's one more trick about this tripod that is truly special. So the trick with this tripod is that you extend out this neck, right? Not the main one, but the little skinny neck. And then you twist this side knob here, and then that is able to tilt over. And now you're able to use this thing as a top-down camera, basically. You can build this up. You can now twist this knob, and now this acts as your pivot point. I mean, it's super well thought out. Now, the only thing is if you had a heavier lens on here, this would be at risk of falling over. But what's cool, on the back, you can flip this lever and then slide this back so that you get a little bit less of a pull. And then also it has a little hook here that you can use to counterbalance it if you want to. I've never seen this before in a travel tripod, and being able to do top-down shots that actually look pretty good in a remote location, like in the middle of Joshua Tree. Yeah, I don't know. I've never seen that before. It's really cool. Okay, so I promise the next camera won't be a Lumix camera, but it'd be kind of weird not to talk about kind of the sister camera to the S5 IIX. And for me, that is the Lumix S9. Now, a lot of this is going to be, like I said, pretty redundant because it is the exact same sensor inside of this thing. That same 6K sensor can do the 6K open gate. You have anamorphic, you have everything. This camera really is the sister camera to the S5 IIX. But the thing that makes this one of my go-to full-frame cameras today, even if it's less powered than some of my other full-frame cameras that I have, is its size. I mean, this thing, look at this is super tiny. I love this thing. I can just toss this into literally any pocket in my backpack, and it takes up absolutely no space. And it being able to do 6K open gate with anamorphic support is just such a killer feature for content creation. I don't want to get too much into this camera just because it is so similar to the last camera, but I don't know, it's just got like this little thumb grip on the back. It feels really good. One thing I didn't talk about with the S5 IIX is that I don't really enjoy it for taking photos. I couldn't really tell you why. I think it's probably just the shape of the body or something along those lines. But I do really enjoy shooting photos on the Lumix S9. I'll go ahead and show you guys some photos that I took when I had this camera with me in Japan. These are actually all JPEG photos because this allows you to do different LUT looks inside of this camera, almost like a film look. Not exactly, but kind of like that in a way. I don't know, this camera is just a lot of fun and way powerful for what it is. And the best part about this camera is it's the cheapest option in this list. I imagine if you look on eBay, you could probably find one a lot cheaper, even though it's missing a few things like a mechanical shutter and an electronic viewfinder on top. I think for the money you're saving and for the overall power this camera delivers, I think you'd be hard pressed to beat the Lumix S9 as an affordable full frame video beast. I love this camera. So let's go ahead and mix this video up a little bit and talk about this Sony camera. This is the Sony a7C II. It is also a fabulous compact full frame camera. And I think this one is going to favor if you're much more on the photography side of things. Now, I'm not really in the photography space. Most of what I do is video, but I did think it would be good to provide context to a camera that is maybe a little bit more photographer friendly than the Lumix system. I do find Lumix to be a great photo camera system as well, but Sony is a bit better. Some of the standout things when it comes to Sony is that it is best in class autofocus. I do think if you want the best tracking and subject tracking, you really can't beat the Sony system. Other things about this camera that are great, you do have a really nice, robust, traditional flip screen, and you get a little like side EVF, which is honestly pretty great. All the dials and switches on the Sony a7C II are great. You do only get one SD card slot, so that's something to keep in mind. That's the same thing with the Lumix S9, but yeah, just one thing to keep in mind. Whereas on the S5 IIX, you do get a dual card slot. And another thing about this camera that kind of is a little bit different is that you're getting a micro HDMI, which is not exactly my favorite, but considering that this camera is about $2,200, it's not really unexpected. This is actually the same sensor that's in the brand new Sony FX2, which is a really neat kind of mid-level cinema camera. So Sony cameras are kind of using the word cinema a little bit loosely, in my opinion, but yeah, it's using the same sensor as that cinema camera. And the stabilization in this thing, while not quite as good as my Lumix cameras, in my opinion, is also really freaking good. So yeah, I think that if you're looking to get specifically more photo-centric and maybe you're leaning more Sony anyhow, consider the a7C II. Now, while I do think that this camera is fantastic, and again, you can't really go wrong with whatever full frame camera system you want to go with, but I do think that the Sony cameras are kind of missing something in today's video spec world compared to the Lumix cameras. So I wanted to throw this in for comparison, but really the major things are there are no Sony cameras that I'm aware of that are allowing you to do open gate video, unfortunately. And honestly, I know that a lot of you guys maybe don't understand quite why open gate is super useful. I've had some people in the comments tell me, well, why don't you just shoot correct for 16:9? You're going to deliver in 16:9 anyways. I kind of hear you, but at the same time, being able to recompose in post-production is a really great thing, especially if you're filming in a run and gun environment, much like I am with YouTube, or maybe if you're doing wedding videography or something along those lines. But again, being able to then crop in for social media content, I think is incredibly valuable. So it not being in the Sony cameras for video specs is kind of a disappointment. Additionally, you're not going to get certain video focused things like waveforms, like false color, like shutter angle, if you know what shutter angle is. Lumix cameras are basically giving you high-end video specs and features, but they're not charging you for it, all the way down to the Lumix S9, which is really interesting. So while I do think that the Sony camera is great and you could film some really amazing things with this camera, there are some downsides, I think, to going with Sony. And you can also extrapolate that into Canon cameras as well. All the same issues Canon has, Sony has. You guys sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Good. No. Now, this is the newest camera that I'm going to be showing you guys today, and that is the Lumix S1 IIe. And for some reason, I feel like this camera kind of flew under the radar because it came out at the same time as the much more powerful Lumix S1 II, also much more expensive. This camera is $2,500 new, which is the most expensive camera on this list, but I also think that it is providing some of the most complete features that you can be asking for in this whole budget full frame camera space, like the anamorphic stabilization in D-Squeeze internal, open gate 6K video, 4K 2 video, full-size HDMI, dual card slot, but actually this one allows you to use a much higher end card with the CF Express B cards, as well as an SD card, which is a great touch. And the reason why you're able to use a higher end CF Express B card is because this camera is offering something that none of the other cameras have, and that's going to be raw internal video. Now, this is definitely a bit specific because it's doing ProRes RAW, and basically, to just kind of simplify it, ProRes RAW is a great raw video codec, just like you would shoot raw photos. However, it is unreadable in DaVinci Resolve. So if you are editing in Final Cut or you're editing in Premiere Pro, this is going to work great for you. However, if you are working in DaVinci Resolve like myself, unfortunately, the raw video is kind of useless to you. That being said, you can still record regular ProRes video, and that does work in DaVinci Resolve, and it does look really good. Now, inside of this camera is going to be that same 6K sensor that we saw in the previous two cameras, and I think the reason why we're seeing that is to keep the cost down on this thing, because again, having a camera that is able to do ProRes RAW internal 6K open gate for under $3,000 is kind of an insane value for price ratio. Another thing that makes this camera different than the previous cameras is that this has a much more robust body. So this is going to share the exact same body that we saw in the Lumix S1R2, which is their higher end flagship full frame camera that Lumix Panasonic offers. And that is going to include this really nifty tilt slash flip screen. This is honestly my favorite screen system. I previously owned the Sony A7R5, which had this screen, and truly it is my favorite screen on any camera, and this has the same kind of functionality as that, which is fantastic. Additionally, with this camera and this body, you do get a lock switch, and if you're doing a lot of video stuff, especially if you're new, if you've accidentally messed up your shutter angle while you're filming because you bumped whatever dial, or you messed up your aperture and you had it all set up how you wanted, this little lock switch is going to allow you to lock those functionalities so that you can't accidentally bump it while you're filming. It's actually a pretty clutch thing, and then you can simply toggle it off if you don't want it on. Again, the thing with Lumix is you're getting kind of all the same things from top to bottom, which is something that I love. I love that the cameras work pretty much exactly the same throughout all of them. Basically, if you're paying more money, you're getting some sort of a better feature that the other cameras just simply aren't capable of. What do you see, bud? It's dirt. Now, here's something that's actually genuinely really unique about this camera specifically, and that's that Lumix has teamed up with Arri to allow you to film ARRILog C3 internally in the Lumix S1 IIe. That Arri, the Arri that is used on every single movie that has won any award, yeah, that Arri is what is allowing you to film ARRILog C3 in here. And the reason why that is particularly great is, again, down the line, if you're going to be upgrading into other camera systems, or you find yourself on sets where they're filming with an Arri camera, you can film in the same color space as those Arri cameras and use this as some sort of a B or even a C camera, which is kind of just a nice little touch that makes this camera stand out. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the lens systems of each of these. So, for example, the reason why I'm not talking about Canon at all is definitely their lens selection. When Canon switched to their latest mount, the RF mount, they barred third-party lens manufacturers like Sigma and Rokinon or whatever else from being able to build third-party, more affordable lenses. You had to buy Canon lenses, and Canon lenses are expensive. Now, when it comes to Sony, Sony has the E-mount, which is a fairly universal mount. There are a lot of third-party lenses that are made for Sony cameras. However, the weird thing about Sony is those are considered third-party lenses, and they actually sometimes limit functionalities of your cameras. There's just some weird limitations that Sony does with third-party lenses. Lumix is a part of something called the L-mount Alliance. So this is an L-mount camera. That means they share the exact same mount with Leica, Blackmagic, Lumix, and also Sigma. That means if you're buying third-party lenses like Sigma, which are much more affordable than Sony or Canon lenses, Lumix considers them first-party lenses, so they're going to give you all the same functionality as a first-party lens. Also, even though those Sigma lenses are cheaper, they look really good. So if you've ever used any Sigma lenses, like their 1835, it's a legendary lens, although that's for a crop sensor, but you get the point. Those lenses are fantastic. I would say when it comes down to lens affordability and having the flexibility to venture out into various different third-party lenses, Lumix is really a clear winner in my opinion. Not to mention, again, if you want to get into anamorphic, which I won't harp on too much, anamorphic lens support on this is it's just here, whereas it's just not there with Sony or Canon or even Nikon for that matter. Now, let me tell you why everything I said doesn't matter. And that's going to come down to what system the people you work with use. I can tell you all day long that Lumix is the best affordable full frame camera, and I really do think that it is. But if the wedding videographer that you want to work with shoots all Canon and you want a second shoot for them, well, likely you need to invest in some sort of a Canon camera, maybe the Canon R8 or the Canon R6 Mark II. I do think that staying in the same system of the people you are actively working or collaborating with is very valuable. That being said, if you are in the content creation space, or you're a solo shooter, or you're doing your own short films, or maybe you just don't care and you're doing your own YouTube content, I think that that's when this whole video actually makes sense again, and I would consider these various different Lumix cameras. Now, I'm definitely not covering everything in this video, so if you have more specific or nuanced things that you're filming, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm always active down there to the best of my ability, and I'm happy to share any sort of specific recommendations that maybe you are looking for. But hopefully this video was helpful in kind of demystifying the full frame video market. Again, this video is not sponsored by Lumix, although it kind of almost looks like it is, just because I do think that they're making the best affordable full frame cameras out there right now. You're welcome to think that it's sponsored if you want. I get those comments all the time. I wish they paid me. I've asked, they said no. So it is what it is. But again, Ulanzi is the actual one that is supporting this video, and this tripod is really slick, and it's definitely about to be my new go-to travel tripod that I carry with me all the time. So take that for whatever it's worth. I hope that you all have a fantastic week. See you in the next one. Take it easy, guys.